Hello Trade Ideas users. Today we're going to focus in this video on how to colorize, or use color gradients in a top list window. As you recall, a top list window with the T mark is basically a way to aggregate a list of stocks that are interesting for us to keep an eye on. In this case, the Squeeze Me scan is looking for stocks with high short float percentages, and that's what we have sorted this column based on. But now we're going to add some color gradients to help organize the data to our eyes. So in the top list windows, there's two different ways to go about coloring. The first one is right-click right in the center of the window, go to Properties, and select Colors. This opens up our color palette, and we're going to focus on here in the upper left-hand corner to colorize whatever data point we want to focus on. In this case, we are going to focus on the short float percentage, which, as you saw, was the same column that I have decided to sort this particular scan by. So the first thing we want to do is discern what our intervals are going to be. And in the case of short float, there are no negative values, so we're going to start at 0. And again, this is a pre-defined default palette, which I'm going to go ahead and just delete. I'm going to highlight and delete each one of those individually so we can start fresh with our own design. And again, the thing we need to start with is, what is our data point? Okay, short the float. Well, let's start with a 0 value as our first level. Let's go up 15 notches as our next level, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll go 30. We'll go 45% of short float, and then we'll maybe finish off with 60% short float. Now notice these have all added up here into the upper left-hand corner. I call this the palette, the color scheme palette. We can assign colors individually, but we have made it extremely easy to use a defaulted palette. If I just click that right there, you can see that the green shades have gone ahead and gone to a gradient format. So now I'm going to click OK. We have colorized the entire list based on what I'm sorting by. If I go over here and sort by something else, then our color gradients kind of go off. So that's step number 1, to show me what has the most value in the darker colors as it pertains to short float. And of course, we could do that with any one of these values using the color sort. But what if we would like to highlight one particular window? Let's give an example here. Let's say I'm focused on the high short floats up here in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, but I would also like to know which ones have a high relative volume. See, we can come over here and sort by relative volume, but now my short float is all kind of out of whack. So let's go back and sort by short float. And here's the second way in which you can colorize a top list window. I want to only reference the relative volume column, so I'm going to put my mouse above the header column on relative volume, right click, and notice there is an option for customizing the relative volume column only. Now we're back to our color palette, and here we are on the right hand side. You'll notice we are only focusing on the relative volume. So once again, we need to determine what are our gradients. Well, relative volume does start at 0. So let's go ahead and we'll just delete these and add our next set of intervals as it relates to relative volume. So again, we'll start with 0. We'll add that. Let's go 0.5. We could add that. And we'll go to 1.0. Then maybe 2.0. And 3.0, and so on. We'll do one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll notice if you have 5, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the color palette, that's a good place to stop. So let's go ahead and use a grayscale for this particular one. Tapping on the grayscale palette has transformed the color gradients of my relative volume. Now I can go ahead and click OK. For any reason, however, if you wanted to maybe lighten or darken any of these, you do have the ability to highlight that level. Click one of these buttons down here, and you could go to a custom color palette if you wanted to. So it's very customizable, but the way we have set it up with the color palette keeps it pretty simple. All right, let's launch our relative volume coloring. And there you go. Well, now we can see where the dark spots are is where the high relative volume is. And so I can basically monitor two data points with different colors using the only column color only function, which again is at the top, right click up there. And then again in the main window is properties, select colors for everything else. And that concludes the colorization of a top list. Hope that helped.